Hey, dear friends, it's good to be with you today on Read Through the Word, January the 16th. There's a lot that has happened here in our reading today with Joseph and his brothers. But I want to take a look at a word that jumped out at me, a phrase, a moment, a thought that jumped out at me, something that Jacob said. And I really honestly tried to shake this because I thought, well, Lord, I was talking to the Lord. I said, there's really not a lot there. The lesson's not going to be very long. Surely there's something else I need to say. And no, there's not. So I'm going to just jump right into the lesson because this is something that I have dealt with a good bit of my life in a particular area. And I titled the lesson today, Afraid of the Might. Listen to our verse. But Jacob wouldn't let Joseph's younger brother Benjamin go with them for fear that some harm might come to him. Now we know why. He's fearful, because his son, his other son, Joseph, beloved Joseph, he believed to die, to be dead. And I honestly, y'all, I had to sit there with this and wrestle with the thought that Jacob lived with this lie. He believed his son Joseph was dead. Had no idea that the other boys had anything to do with it. That's like another story, another chapter in the story. But this is a father who has believed for years. I think it's 17 years is how long. I may be wrong on that, but I believe it's 17 years. That his son Joseph was dead. And he lived all of those years with that belief, but also with the fear that something was going to happen to his other son by Rachel, Benjamin, that baby. And I struggled with this. I thought, wow, this poor father, this poor man has lived with deception and lies from his other sons, and how they allowed him to live with those lies. With that lie, it escapes me. It really does. Day in and day out, family meal after family meal, watching their father mourn, but also be afraid that some harm might come to Benjamin. And I just focused on that word might. What might happen. And in my journal, I wrote unnecessary. It just wasn't necessary for Jacob to live deceived. And it wasn't necessary for Jacob to live in fear. Again, the deception is a different chapter of the story. So I want to focus on the fear. But he lived in fear. Fear is unnecessary, means not necessary. It means needless. It means avoidable. When we allow ourselves to live, I'm not saying that we can't be afraid. We're going to be afraid. But when we allow ourselves to live in fear, it's unnecessary, because we have a faithful, loving, and trustworthy Father who cares for his own. When we live in this unnecessary fear, we're afraid of the might. what might happen. What might happen. It steals our present peace. It keeps us from enjoying the now and living in the moment of the joy of the now. And you know what? It paralyzes us from moving forward. It really does. I have lived much of my married life, I would say really after my children were born. So my daughter is 21. So much of her life, previously to when she was born, I don't remember this fear. But after my children were born, I remember living, and as long as they have been alive, and my husband has had a job that required travel, I have had a fear of being a young widowed woman with 2 children to raise. And I'm very sensitive when I say that, because I know women who have lost their husbands at a young age and are courageously raising their children. So I promise I'm being as sensitive as I know how. I have a very, very dear friend that's a very personal friend that I have watched courageously raise her daughters after the death of her husband. My sister-in-law courageously has raised her children alone. They were 2 young widowed women. And I never thought about them in relation to my fear, in regard to my fear. But I truly have believed that. And I really have to talk myself out of that nonsense. I can't live there. I can't live there. Because if I did, it steals my peace. It paralyzes me from moving on, and it keeps me from enjoying what's right in front of me. Sure, I'm gonna be fearful about things, and honestly, I still battle with that fear of, when he goes, is he coming back? But I have to remind myself of these things here when I feel afraid. Not live in fear, because we're going to be afraid, and it's okay. Because when we live in fear, we can seek the Lord to deliver us from it, Psalm says. We can remember that fear is not from the Lord. It's a fear tactic. It's a scare tactic from the enemy. That we can cast our cares on him, and that we can put our trust in God. And God forbid my greatest fear does happen. My God is still trustworthy. He will still carry my cares, and he will still deliver me from that fear. And I feel like I just needed to address the fact that we don't have to live consumed with fear. That we have a God who will carry it for us, no matter how many times we cast it his way. He is trustworthy. And that we have to remember that fear is not of the enemy, not of the Lord. And we need to tell the enemy to flee, that he is not going to have any real estate in our brain and in our thinking and in our heart. That our God is faithful, and he will deliver us from our fears. We'll see you tomorrow on Read Through the Word.